no problem.
Cool. We love your background, and my God, we wish we were all there with you right now.
Well, I wish I was there too, but it's just the background right now.
Can you just tell us a little bit about, well, actually, let's just introduce what we're doing. So, hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Kraft, and I am a professor in the School of Communication. I am also the director of Ohio State Sports and Society Initiative. And it is a privilege that I get to bring you some of just the most amazing people to come and talk with us about sports in lieu of sports happening, although we're getting a little bit back, so we're hoping for more. So we're thrilled that Coach Day was able to join us today. Just some parameters. The chat is available, although you'll be chatting to me as opposed to chatting to everyone. So please just send the message to me and I will ask the questions of Coach Day, or I'll call on you to ask the question of Coach Day, because we want this to be a dialogue. But if you have anything that isn't working technologically, just let me know. We are recording this and we're going to post this online, so just so you know that beforehand. But we definitely want to hear from you, and I know that we all have a lot of questions that we want to know about how the football team's doing, and I got to ask, how have you been occupying your time? This must be the most downtime that you've had in quite some time, especially at this time of year.
Absolutely. And yeah, same thing. If something doesn't come through right, just let me know. But yeah, it's been very unique. It hasn't been as much down as you think, because there's actually a lot more distractions for us, because we have our kids, we have our family in our home that we typically don't do a lot of work in. And so it's a challenge. It's definitely been something that took a while to get into a routine with. And, but we're all working hard to find this new routine. And that's the players, that's the coaches, that's everybody involved. And so, we've really spent time talking to our team about, finding that new routine with their families, because they're not used to bumping into each other for this long of a time. They typically they're in college, and the family dynamics and things change when you leave to go to college, and you have brothers. Maybe you don't have brothers. They're empty nesters. I mean, everyone has their own dynamics at home, and so we're working through that. But we're staying in touch. We have lots of communication through this Zoom. With recruits, with the players, with the staff. And just trying to find the best way to stay in touch, even though we're all working remotely.
Yeah, I talked to Wyatt Davis not long ago. We were in class together, and he just mentioned how difficult it is to be away from the things you take for granted, the workout equipment and coaches and the whole kind of the team feeling. And, I'm wondering, how do you build team and camaraderie? I know how important the summer is to do that when we're not going to be live and in person in the summer.
Well, it's hard. We're hoping to maybe get some of the guys back here for the summer, but we're relying on this right here. And for some of the team meetings, we've had different people. We had Dr. Borchers come on and explain what COVID-19 was one week. And then we had Candace Williams, who's part of our sports psychology department, talk about mental health and those type of things. That was the second week. And then the third week, we had Anthony Gonzalez come on, who's the U.S. House of Representatives, former OSU wide receiver, NFL wide receiver, and just talk about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But I think the most effective one was this one we had the last 2 weeks, in which our team, our guys got on and they talked a little bit about what they're going through during this time. And I thought that was really powerful. It was one thing to see someone, like your coach, but it's also great to see your peers. And some of the messages were really powerful. And I think the thing you heard the most was that they miss each other. And like you said, Wyatt was one of them, and he talked about, and several guys talked about how they miss each other and they miss that interaction, and they won't take it for granted anymore.
Isn't that the truth? So we have a question here. Murphy, you want to ask your question?
Hello, Coach. I read the piece in The Athletic about your tenure at the University of New Hampshire. Describe how your time there helped shape your coaching career.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where I learned really everything I know now about football. I learned a lot about what it means to be a coach, what it means to be a player, hard work, a lot of those things. And the guy who coached me was Chip Kelly, who is the head coach at UCLA. And I coached with him in the NFL. And so he really helped me get into this profession. But Sean McDonald, who was the head coach at the time, who's had a lot of success there, just taught me what it means to be a coach. And there's so much that goes with that. As a coach, you're You're a teacher, you're a mentor, you're kind of an uncle, you're a brother, you're a lot of things. And so there's different hats to wear. And I say this a lot, that if you want to become a football coach, you don't go to school to become a football coach. If you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or, into business, you go to those types of schools and you learn your trade. But where do you learn to be a football coach? And the only way to do that is really through the apprenticeship. And I was just very, very fortunate enough to be around great coaches when I was coming up through. And a lot of them were at the University of New Hampshire.
I'm sure that you're getting this question a lot, and it's probably not one that can easily be answered, but do you have any sense of what's going to happen in the fall, or, can you give us any sense of what the dialogue has been about how to bring football back in the fall?
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball. Obviously, everyone knows that. And I would argue that, we still are in such a time period where we're still learning so much information about everything going on. I mean, I say it to a lot of people. I wake up every morning and I think I have a brand new, thought on where we're at or where this thing's going. And then I wake up the next day and it completely changes and like drastically. And I just, I see things on TV. I see what's going on with our team. And there's just a lot of things that I don't quite understand about any of this. And, we're trying to figure this out. But the biggest thing is, if we're going to say that we have our student athletes and our staff's health and safety at the forefront of the conversation, then we have to keep them that way. And so that's what we're doing. And I'll tell you what, Gene Smith and President Drake are doing a great job. When Gene Smith's on these calls, he really is a strong voice that's really, really good. And obviously what I thought of him going into this, couldn't get much higher, but it even is. I mean, just seeing the way he handles this stuff. That being said, I can see us, playing games that are modified one way or another. And there's going to be a new norm, and we have to figure out what that is. And so we're still right in the teeth of that thing, but I'm very optimistic that we are going to play some sort of football in the fall.
Well, we are too, if you are. Jack, you had a question. Jack Murphy? Oh, he was yeah, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Yeah.
Oh, hey, Coach. My question was about being in the NFL and just like how different was coaching in the NFL versus your prior experience in college, and then how that kind of changed coaching at Ohio State.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the biggest thing in college is that you're just very much a part of the student athletes, every part of their lives. You start with recruiting, and you recruit, their families, and you sit in their homes, and you get to choose the type of people you bring into your program. That's not the case in the NFL. The GM and personnel department decides who you get, and you got to kind of work with them. And the second thing is, they're still young men that you're seeing grow up in front of your eyes. And you're teaching them the ways and the work ethic and all those things. And, in the NFL, you get a paycheck. So you motivate in college much different than the NFL. Really, the NFL motivation is money. And that's not typically the case in college. A lot of these guys want to go make money in the NFL, but that's not why they're playing. And it's more about the love of their brother, the love of their coach. And so, there's academics involved. There's a lot of things. Now, the cool thing of coaching in the NFL is I learned what it looked like to see some of the best people at the top of their trade. So some of the best quarterbacks, some of the best running backs, some of the best guys, just what a pro looks like. And so, a lot of our guys can use that as a reference. Like, this is what a pro looks like. Like, for instance, Joe Staley, who played left tackle for the 49ers, who was an all-pro for over a decade. The way he went about his walkthroughs every day and the way he practiced every day, that's what a pro looks like. And so I use that as a reference. When I used to talk about Billy Price did the same thing, and now the same thing with our guys. And that's what the standard should be if you want to be a pro. And so it gives you a little bit of a benchmark on where guys need to be in terms of their professionalism and how they go about their day-to-day work.
I've been fortunate enough to teach some students who've gone on to pro careers, and one thing that they say when they come back is how different it is. Kind of exactly what you said about, you play for love and your brother love of the game, and then it becomes about money. What kind of advice do you give, people like Damon Arnett or, the ones who were drafted in this past draft before they make that transition from playing for love of team and now, now you're kind of a commodity. How do you help prepare them?
Well, you start to let them know, especially going into their last year of college, that as they make that transition, there's not going to be anybody really holding your hand, and we have so many resources here that as they start off, we really show them the way. And, they don't have that in the NFL. So when they go home during the off season, it's on them. And, we've had some great Zoom calls with the Bosas and just different people talking to our current players about what that's like, because that's really what they're going through now in the quarantine. They don't have the influence of the coaches. So self-discipline is really, really important in so many areas. And so, for different people, the advice we give is make sure you have enough people that surround you that aren't just going to tell you what you want to hear. And you need some truth tellers in your life that are willing to challenge you and call you out when maybe, you're doing something foolish with your money or whatever that might be. And so the more truth tellers you can have around you, the better off you're going to be.
Clark, you had a question?
Yeah. Hi, Coach Day.
Hey there, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I was wondering about someone like Trey Sermon, because he seems like he's going to be pretty important, but he was added at a really weird time, obviously. So how are you kind of trying to get him acclimated?
Yep. So Coach Alford has done a great job in terms of just through these Zoom calls, teaching them the offense. So we can kind of share the screen and go through some cut-ups and show them. We have such great film of running backs in the past few years in our offense doing exactly what he would do. And Trey's really bright. I mean, Trey really knows protections. He knows different football. His football IQ is really high. And so, so far it's been great. Now, whether he can translate that to the field quickly when we get to the preseason, that's yet to be seen. But it certainly helps because he is so bright. And just talking football with him, it makes sense. Some guys it doesn't make sense. Other guys it does. It seems to make sense. But then again, he's got to carry it over to the field. And everything we've heard about him coming into this leads us to believe that it will.
Drew, you had a question about name, image, and likeness.
Yes, Coach. Drew here. Ohio State, we've always done well with branding ourselves, both the university and its players. And a perfect example recently of Chris Olave rebranding his number, CO2. It's a really cool kind of name to it. Just how have you guys approached your players with the new news of the name, image, and likeness opportunities?
Yeah, Drew, great question. So on our team meeting last Wednesday, for 15 minutes, Gene Smith came on and explained to them what they can expect in 2021. And, he actually explained to Chris Olave on the call that there's a chance someone like Chris could make over six figures during their time at Ohio State. Now, when it passes is dependent upon, when the legislation goes through and who's available at that time. But we have a platform program that we use in recruiting with 5 full-time staff members. And they're really good. I mean, I think you see the videos that Zach Schwartz and that whole creative media department puts together. But part of that brand or part of that department is to help them with their brand and then use that platform that we have at Ohio State to help them with that. Because we think the name, image, and likeness will have a lot to do in the social media world with just the number of clicks that we get and followers. And so we use that in recruiting to tell them that this is going to be a great opportunity depending on how all the rules shake out. But I think our creative media department, we're ahead of some other people just because we've poured a lot of resources in there and they really help the guys with their brand and then use their brand in the platform to go do something really cool.
Where do you think this is going, this whole name, image, and likeness? I mean, we're actually having a 3-part seminar with Bruce Wimbish and Luke Fedlam talking about this very topic. We just had JT on. This is, you talk about Chris making 6 figures, and JT had some really interesting insights about the potential for it to be disruptive in the locker room. If you're thinking about one person making money and other people not, do you see, I'm sure you do see opportunity and challenges. Where do you kind of see either side of that?
You're right. It's very sticky and there's a fine line. We worry about boosters, third parties, agents. That's a major concern. I don't worry as much about the locker room, because in the NFL, certain guys make different prices and, they have certain salaries. So I don't think that'll be an issue. I do think it come a little bit of as a distraction where guys start focusing too much on trying to make money than getting better at football. Because in the NFL, how good you play typically, helps you get more money. Well, that may not necessarily be the case in college. So that'll be something we'll have to really tackle when we get there. But I do think that it's a great opportunity for our players, and how we manage it is going to be critical. I don't think you can fight it. I don't think that's, something you have to adapt to.
Right.
And we're just going to try to, as time goes on, there's different things that, issues come up and you got to handle them. And we'll try to do that as they come.
Colin, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. Coach, thanks for joining us today. Kind of along the same topic. How does that relationship between the coaching staff and the creative media department compare between like Ohio State and then the NFL?
Yeah, when I was in the NFL, there was nothing like that at all. There was a marketing department that would market our players, but that was very, very different. This creative media department, they build the brand, they build your logo, they help you promote it, like the chase with the Predator thing and all that, and all the different graphics that they build and design. And I don't even think it's close to the NFL stuff. I don't see anything out there that's even near it. And so, why that is, I don't know. I think maybe it has to do with recruiting, but I think we're way ahead of those people.
We were going to have I had this great lunch plan for us in April, and you were going to come and we were going to be in our Mind Games event. And it was going to be just this amazing conversation, because I know how important mental health is to you and the emphasis that you've put on it. And, in the time that we're in now, it seems like this is an ever important message. What kind of message are you trying to get out about mental health, to your players specifically, but, to the fans who are, feeling such uncertainty, to our students who are feeling such uncertainty? How have you been able to kind of bring that message out now?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is awareness and making sure that people understand that it is okay to ask for help. That's the biggest thing for me, especially with football players, but just in general. And I think it's important that everybody knows that this isn't an easy time, and that, you have your physical health, but you have your mental health, and they're equally as important, and they go hand in hand. And, we don't think twice about going for a jog and going to work out and lift and watch what we eat. But, do we watch what we put, into our brain in terms of watching things? Do we think about, getting mental workouts and those type of things? They're just as important. And so we just talk about those things, and then being aware of it, I think, is really important. Like, being aware that you're in your house for an extended period of time, and you have these family dynamics at play that aren't going to be easy. And I think being able to step out and have a wider perspective of it and realize, okay, this is a challenge. Now, how can I do a better job of managing this, and talking things out? And I think all those things help. And then knowing that this is going to come to an end eventually, or this isn't the end of the world. We're going to work through this, but also having enough, again, awareness to know that there's a lot of people who have died from this, and it's very sad, and we have to make sure that we respect that.
Nathan, you had a question?
Yeah. Hi, Coach Day. Thanks for joining us. How have your student leaders, like your team captains, responded to this crisis, and have they had a role in that remote motivation of your team?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was the last two team meetings we had were great. We have some leadership meeting that, each guy's responsible for their unit, and making sure that those guys are accountable to the rest of the team. But they've addressed the team and just talked to them about different things. And, we had a guy get on there and explain, what his routine is every day, what's motivating him during this time. And had another guy get on and talk about how his unit is holding up the Buckeye standard and how they're being accountable to everybody else. And so just sharing those type of things and seeing the other players and seeing their faces, I think, really been powerful.
Danny, you have a question?
Yes. Hey, Coach. I was wondering, in what ways do you have your players staying in shape even though they're all in like completely different situations at home?
Yeah, that's been a challenge because we everyone, like you said, has a very, very different situation. We have guys in Hawaii and New York City and everywhere in between. So Coach Mick and the strength and conditioning staff do daily check-ins to find out where they're at. And we had Jeremy Ruckert built himself a whole weight set. Him and his dad went to his basement and built something up. We've had guys fill up milk cartons full of sand. Guys have to be creative, and they've been able to, communicate with our strength and conditioning staff and then check in with their body weights and kind of tell them what they've been doing. But it has not been easy, and we're really hoping to get them back together again here soon.
Patrick, you're next.
Hi, Coach. So I was just wondering, like, kind of how has recruiting been changed with all just the certain, like, the recent changes, but then also the uncertainty moving forward?
Well, there hasn't been any really visits this spring, which is as much as a challenge because February's dead. And then by the time February was over, we only really had 1 week in March, and then we were on the quarantine. So these guys haven't really been able to visit. So it's been a lot of Zoom calls. And during those Zoom calls, it's about an hour visit. We go through everything. We go through academics. We go through the Real Life Wednesday program, the platform program, strength and conditioning. And then I get on and talk about Circle of Care and other resources that we provide. And then we talk football. And that's a long meeting. But this is what we've been doing to try to bring, we call them virtual tours and virtual visits, to try to bring Ohio State to their living room. It's not as good, obviously, as a visit, but we're making it work. And I think we were really the first ones to do it. And I think that's why when this all happened, we caught fire early on because we were just killing it. And then I think word, like anything else, word gets out that we were doing it. Now everybody's doing it. And so it's kind of slowed down, but that's life. You just got to keep adapting and trying to find cool ways to keep these guys engaged.
This must be exhausting for you. I mean, I've been on Zoom since 9 o'clock this morning. This is my sixth Zoom event. And I can't imagine what it's like for you because you have to be like, there's no like turning your screen off when you're on these things. How do you kind of keep going with this?
Well, I'm tired of looking at screens. I can tell you that right now. There's been a lot of screens and it's been a lot, but it's like anything else. I mean, you think about it, some of the people that are going through the worst of this during this time. I mean, it's okay. The life is still good. The family's still healthy. Everybody's good. And we can make some sacrifices for a short period of time. And we, it's like anything else, people who can work through it and work through the fatigue and the pain and keep busting through during this time, they'll come out of this on top and they'll have an advantage and they'll be in good shape. And so it's like anything else. You just got to work your way through it and stay strong and, take care of your mind, take care of your family, take care of your body, and then, wake up in the morning and try to do it again. And then hopefully we look back on this as a learning experience that maybe there's other ways to do day-to-day business that maybe we didn't use before and think of it as a positive.
I mean, thinking back to, the first 3 games that you coached and then the whole sequencing of the evolution of you moving into the head coach position, if we take the immediate oddity of this situation out, what has been the biggest adjustment and the things that surprised you the most making such a rapid transition from being on a coaching staff to being head coach?
Well, what you realize really fast that you are in complete trust of the guys that work underneath you and that you're only as good as your assistant coaches. And you put so much trust in those guys that, once you break the meeting, that they're going to echo the message that you've given. And so loyalty is critically important at that point. And then same thing with the leaders. I mean, you're really only as good as those guys. So that was really, really important. And then the big thing for me was staying in the moment, which is a term that I used, and especially during, like you said, those 3 weeks. I mean, it was the day before preseason started, and Gene Smith says you're going to be the head coach here moving forward until we figure out what's going on. And so we had practice 1, and it was like, you know what? Let's just get through this practice. Let's just put the practice plan, and then let's get through this practice, and then we'll worry about tomorrow when it gets here. And that's what we did. And then we worried about day 2, and then day 3, and then before you know it, you stack together these days, and we kind of build something cool. Well, the only way to do that was to stay in the moment and, not think about the past, not worry about the future and get anxious, but be right in the moment, be now, be present. And I thought it was really cool watching The Last Dance with Michael Jordan last night. And one of the things that, I forget who said it, but they said one of the best things about Michael Jordan was he was always present. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that's really cool because that's hard to do. And he was always present. He was right there. And that's something I've had to learn to do. And it helped me get through that time.
And you're also in a sport where everyone else who's watching you lives in the past. So there's plays and there's moments in time. I know you're probably thinking of the same one I am, that fans cannot get rid of, they can't let go. I'm sure they ask you about it a lot. When you have scenarios like that where your season changes on a moment in time that people will debate until the end of time, what's your response to that when people ask you about the catch no catch?
Yeah, well, I just say, well, I stay in the moment. We've moved on, but the reality of it is, it's not that easy. So we use it as motivation. We use it as something that I revisit, even though I say stay in the moment. I still use it there because I just think it motivates you when you get that close to something. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out that day. And, we can point to that. We can point to a lot of things. And, but at the end of the day, it didn't get done. So now what are we going to do to make sure that doesn't ever happen again? And, we still had a chance to win a game at the end, and we didn't. So again, use it as motivation, but at the same point, we don't spend a lot of time on that, because let's get back to right now and be present and have a great day today.
There's these, I don't know, there's going to be this, we're totally biased. I mean, I have to acknowledge that, right? We love Ohio State. We are totally committed to the Ohio State football, but we have to say even objectively that it seems like we do things differently here, that Ohio State has a different feel about it. It has a different expectation. I know academically the experiences that I have are not duplicated in a lot of big programs, Power 5 programs. From your perspective, what is it that makes Ohio State such a different space, and the expectations to be so high in so many areas and met in so many areas?
Well, the tradition is certainly unlike any other. And so the great players and coaches that have done such great things here in the past, and the quality football that's in Ohio from the high school level on up is such a huge part of it. I also think that Ohio's a special place in that people grew up in Ohio. A lot of them stay in Ohio. And even if they left Ohio, they still are from Ohio. And it doesn't matter where they go. And it might be their grandparents, it might be them, it might be someone in their family, but they're proud to be from Ohio, and they're proud to be Buckeyes. And so, when it comes to that rivalry game, especially, like that's their identity. When they put on a block O on their hat or on their shirt or something like that, or they put their flag out in front of their house, that's who they are to their core. And so that's why it means so much. And that's why it's such pressure filled. And that's why you have to win every game here, because that's just the way it goes. And listen, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. But the good news is you got an opportunity every time you walk into a recruit's, house, or you're recruiting somebody, you go to the front of the line. I mean, you have the option to go get involved with some of the best players in the country. Now, it's not that easy. You got to go recruit them, and you got to build something special, and you got to run a good program, and you got to take care of the kids and know how you're, handling yourself on the field with the great coaches. And there's so much that goes into it. But to answer your question, what makes us, I think, of the people and how much they just, the scarlet and gray just runs in their blood.
Clark, you had a great kind of question that follows this up.
Yeah, I was kind of looking for something positive.
We all are looking for something positive.
Yeah. Just like you've had to change everything about how you work with the team. Is there anything that you've found to just be really good and you might want to keep doing it in the future?
You mean from the past?
Or from this?
Kind of from the past 2 months, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that I would probably have the players get up in front of the team more often, just because the players listen to players. So I think that's been really, really good. I also think that there's ways through this Zoom to help in recruiting a little better. We can do some group recruiting down the road. But in terms of the players, unless they're at home or remote, we couldn't get to them. We probably wouldn't change all that much, but it certainly would help a lot in recruiting.
Drew, you had a question about, and Connor had a similar one. So Drew, maybe you could ask about Justin.
Yes, you've probably answered this question a few times before, but just how have you seen Justin Fields progress both as a player, but also as a teammate and a person since he's joined the Ohio State program?
Yeah, a great question. I think Justin's improved a bunch. When you watch him last spring to where he was at the end of the season, I'm excited about what he's going to look like this year. He came to Ohio State as kind of a kid who didn't play a lot at Georgia and was still trying to find his way to a Heisman Trophy finalist who's learned how to lead. And, he lost a tough game. And so now he's a little scarred and a little bit, salty that way, which you like. You like to have somebody that's kind of had something taken away from him and understands how real this is. That's something that happens with certain quarterbacks is, they play, and they don't quite understand the consequences, but he's a special young man. He learns things quick. He picks things up really, really fast. And to think that he played as well as he did last year coming in without very much experience is tremendous. That's why I'm really excited to see what happens this fall.
Lynn, you have a great question about the transfer portal?
Yeah. Hi, Coach Day. Thank you for joining us today. My question is, what do you look for when recruiting players that enter the transfer portal?
Well, you want to find out, why they're in the transfer portal, because typically something went wrong at their school. Now everybody has a story, Trey Sermons was in the transfer portal. Joe Burrow was in the transfer portal. Those type of things, those reasons. Jonah Jackson. They make sense. They have a story. And then typically what I do is I call the head coach of that team to find out. I mean, I called Lincoln Riley and asked him about Trey. Nobody really called me on Joe, so they kind of lucked out, I guess. I don't know what to say. But I always call. I called Chris Ash when Jonah Jackson was available. And we've had guys enter the portal, and a few of the coaches will call me, but it surprises me how few. I mean, I'll call the coaches and just ask, what is, if they say, well, he doesn't have a very good attitude, he's kind of not doing what he's supposed to, and he just kind of wants an easy way out, that's not gonna work for us. Hey, he's a great kid, but there's a kid in front of him, or if there's a good story and a good reason, then we'll investigate further. But it's a red flag if someone goes into the portal. Now everybody has a story, and so we try to peel that back, and so that's kind of how we approach it.
I mean, it is such a double-edged sword. I mean, looking at the situation here, of course, with Joe and Justin, and what you just said about it being a red flag. Are we in that in-between period where it's a red flag now, but in 5 years it'll just be what is? I mean, Coach Holtman's gotten some criticism because several players have entered the transfer portal there, but yet is that just going to be the new reality that that's what players do?
Well, I think every sport's different. I say this all the time. Chris Holtman is dealing with 12 quarterbacks. So since we've been here, we had JT, we had Joe who left, we had Tate who left, we had Dwayne, went to the NFL after 1 year, we had Matt Baldwin who left, and then we had Justin Fields who transferred from Georgia. So, I mean, that's craziness. And that's what he's dealing with in basketball, because that's just a whole different sport. So I think it depends on the position too. I think the quarterback thing will always be this way. But I think some of the other positions, it'll still be a red flag, because why did they leave? Again, there was a coaching change. Makes a lot of sense. Somebody back home got sick. There you go. I mean, if there's a good reason, if it's just because they got beat out and they just want to enter the transfer portal, because truth be told, nowadays when times get tough, a lot of kids, they just want to jump into the portal and go somewhere where it's easier.
Right.
And that's a red flag to us. Now, that's not always the case, but that's something that's out there.
Nathan, you had a question about that team up north? You're muted. Wait, he's still muted. Let me unmute you. There you go.
Hi. So that rivalry with that state up north has been a little bit lopsided of recent. But with some recruits coming from all across the nation, from Texas, California, Florida, how do you get them engaged with that rivalry that's so important here that they may not have grown up watching?
Well, we talk about it in recruiting right from the start. They're not allowed to wear blue in the building, or their family when they walk in for recruits. Doesn't matter who they are. Or if they do, they're going to be doing push-ups, and we give them a hard time. But then we make them, they live it when they're here every day. They see it all over the building. And then we have, a lot of stuff that we do on a daily basis that has the team up north involved with it. We have it during practice. We have it during our workouts. It's, again, blasted all over the facility. There's no blue markers on the walls. I mean, it's all those things that we talk about all the time. So it becomes a way of life, and those guys really embrace it.
Darby, you had a good question?
Yeah, hey there. Thanks so much for being here today. So, I'm just thinking the coach-player relationship can be really challenging. It's a very unique line to walk. And like you're saying, there's not, you don't go to college and figure out how to be a football coach. You just kind of have to figure that out. And so would love to know if you're willing to share, especially in a program that's as under the microscope as this one, what is your approach to navigating that coach-player relationship, and kind of what influence are you hoping to have on their lives, or what role are you aiming to play in their lives?
This is something that's changed over my career. I thought early on that, when you're a coach, that you just demand the respect of the player because of your role, because you have the authority of being the coach. And over time, what I realized is you only have that if you gain their respect. And so, over time, you start to learn about that as you get older. But at the end of the day, you're treating them like your son. And how do you do that? we talk about tough love, which means you have to be tough. You got to be tough to play this game. You got to be mentally tough, physically tough, but also it's about love and motivating through love. And that sustains it. Motivating through fear doesn't, in my opinion. And so you try to create that love. And how do you create love? With time. And you have to spend time with them. That's the only way you're really going to create love. And then you have to build trust through three things: through competency, through connection, and through character. And if you do those things, then you have a chance to build them. And then communication is critical with them and their parents, and let them know exactly where they stand. And if you kind of hit on all those areas, then you have a chance. And the goal, like you said, is to make an impact on them on the field, but then also off the field, and create a relationship where you stay in touch with them for the rest of your life.
Right. Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing.
So we have a lot of aspiring sports journalists on here, broadcasters, writers, and I actually do teach them there is such a thing as a stupid question. What is the most difficult? what is the thing that you could teach them in terms of being successful at their jobs, in terms of working, covering a coach like you? I mean, what are some of the things that you see that you'd hope that they wouldn't repeat, or things that you hope they would repeat?
You mean in terms of asking questions and how to handle that part of it? Yeah, I
treat
think
you as a person and how to engage, in a team environment like that.
Yeah, I think that when you're asking questions that become snarky or like trying to get you, you just become defensive as a coach. When you ask the question that's not as offensive or as edgy, but if you can ask the question a little softer, but knowing, listen, I got a job to do, coach. I got to ask this question. Here it is, and I'm going to allow you an opportunity to answer this. Not like you're a lawyer trying to get them, to say something. That's where I really struggle with. And the guys who cover us are unbelievable. They're really good. They got a job to do. And as a coach, you understand that after a loss, they're going to ask you tough questions. But when you start getting into the thing where, I got you, coach, or I got you to say something or lead you down a tough road, that's when you can create a little resentment, I think, from the coaches. And you don't want to do that, because the relationship between the reporter and the coach is critically important for down the road. And we try to help each other out. They got a job to do. I got a job to do. And if we can all work together, then life's good.
It's a challenging balance. I worked in the NBA, and those are professionals, right? They get paid to answer questions or not. We're dealing with college students who sometimes say things that they shouldn't, or they're still 18, 19-year-old kids. How do you kind of prepare them to be under the scrutiny of Ohio State football, where there's more people? I mean, there are playoff games in the NFL that don't have as many reporters as your average practice does. So how do you kind of help them navigate those waters?
I mean, in the beginning, RSID will give them tips and pointers and, things that they hit on. And, during the season on Tuesdays when our guys become available, a lot of times I'll meet with them before and just talk to them about my message for the press conference and things they need to hit on. And then the constant reminders that we don't talk about injuries. We don't talk about other players. We really don't talk about ourselves in the media, because, that's not what we want to talk about, because then you get down bad roads. Scheme is not something we hit on, and we just keep reminding them that sometimes guys are going to say things like, we had a guy this year who I literally said the day before, here, we don't talk about injuries, and he got kind of cornered with a question a little bit and talked about one of the other players, and now hopefully he'll be back in about a month. And so then the story was he's out for a month, and I never said that. So I bring the kid in. I said, you just told America that he's out for a month. And he's like, I didn't say that. And I said, look it. And he says, oh my God, I didn't even realize I did that. So it's one of those things, you can't cover everything, but you try to do the best you can. And we have great kids. They do a great job.
Josh, you have a great question about the negative things that some of those players face.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for joining us today. So I'm curious how you and your coaching staff approach the way the media might speak on Ohio State and the program, because obviously everyone's got something to say, and not all of it is positive all the time. So I was just curious, if you guys are vocal with the players about not paying attention to some of the negative things that people might say, because in this world of social media and you have access to pretty much everything, it might be hard for them when they're not with you guys to, not be constantly checking their phones and seeing what everyone's saying, especially, with the type of program that we have here.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but it's something that we we do talk about it. That's why we have the mental health area and some of the sports psychologists to be a reference for them. But yeah, I mean, it's something that is not easy. But when you're playing at this level, that comes with the territory, and you have to understand that. And that, you know, we have a lot of opponents, and so every opponent is going to hate me. They're going to hate Justin Fields, and that's just the way they're built. And so, you know, with the positive comes a negative. You know, it's kind of like being in politics. You know, half the country's going to hate you, half the country's going to love you, you know, based on your party. Well, it's the same thing when you have a team and an affiliation, and you have to understand that when you go into it. And it doesn't make it easy, but that's just kind of the world you live in when you play on a big stage. And so we have an article in the not an article, but a quote when you walk into our team room called "The Man in the Arena" by Roosevelt. And he just talks about, you know, what it means to be in the arena, and then, you know, the timid souls that kind of sit there and criticize from the crowd, and that only the true Orioles will know who are in the arena what really goes on. And you know, so we try to help them with that and give them some perspective.
Connor, you have a question about Chris Olave and his offseason? I think you're muted, so I'll ask for you, Connor. Connor says, what have been your thoughts on Chris Olave's offseason, and what do you expect from him this year?
Well, you know, it's hard to say what his offseason's been like because we really haven't been with him. You know, he's been in San Diego, but he's been very motivated. He's talked to the team about what he's been doing. I think he has high aspirations for himself for next year. He's a very, very talented guy going into his third year. And, you know, I can see him being a high draft pick if he has the season that he expects. But he's highly motivated. And so I think, you know, guys like him during this time will flourish.
So, you know, one of the reasons that we've been doing these is because, you know, we got a lot of people sitting home with a lot to think about, and a lot of them are alone, and their future is uncertain. And the one thing we've been able to count on is Ohio State football. I mean, you know, the sun will rise and set, and, you know, Ohio State will take the field, and God willing, that will happen. But if you could kind of talk to them at, you know, this time of uncertainty, what would you want to say to people about kind of getting through this and the place that maybe football will hold in terms of helping us heal?
Well, I mean, I think we all have hopes that we'll be on the field and we'll all be there together and running out of the stadium and scoring touchdowns, and we all get to celebrate together. But whether that happens or not, we don't know. Maybe we have to celebrate remotely. Maybe we have to celebrate in small groups. I don't know what that's going to look like. But no matter what, we're all together on this, and that we stick together. And that eventually we're going to get through this, and we are going to celebrate together. And you know, you got our word that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we're celebrating and that we're having fun and we're doing a great job. Knowing that, you know, we got to keep our guys safe, and you know, they want nothing more than to get on the field. Trust me, we all want to get back together, but we got to handle this the right way, and eventually we will get back together, and hopefully it's sooner than later. But yes, nobody wants us to celebrate some touchdowns in the shoe more than I do.
Coach Day, we are so thrilled that you joined us today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all the joy that you bring on the field and all the dedication you have to your players off the field. It is a privilege to be with you.
No, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you for all your help and all you do to help us. And, you know, everybody stay safe, and hopefully we can all get together soon. So you guys take care. Have a great week, and go Bucks.
Go Bucks.